So one thing I've noticed recently is how people love turning personal choice into universal rules. Like for example, relationships. Like as if there's a bunch of rules that we need to follow, otherwise we're doing it all wrong. I guess we forgot that relationships are personal, huh? What works for me might not work for you, and that's perfectly fine. Who cares? Obviously there's general rules like you shouldn't commit violence against your partner or actively cheat without their knowledge, but my problem is when people take their own preferences and push them onto others as if they're the perfect standard. And let me tell you, there's a lot of that going on, especially online, as always. I've seen too many people preaching about how relationships should look, how love should be shown, and how much money should be spent. It's so exhausting that even single people are starting to change their minds about dating. Of course, there's nothing wrong with showing off your partner and what you guys do for each other because we all love to brag, but it's when we start shifting others for not living by those same standards. That's when I have a problem. Remember that phrase that was all over the internet for a bit, which was, if he wanted to, he would. I don't know if people still say that, but I've heard it enough that I'm beginning to get tired of it again. People love throwing this around like it's some sort of mind-blowing truth, but I feel like it's completely out of touch of how life works. Just because someone wants to do something doesn't mean they can. Life is messy. There are jobs, bills, responsibilities, and sometimes real life just gets in the way. I remember when my partner and I were long distance. I wanted to see him every day, and he wanted that too. But guess what? We lived in different states. He had a job, I had responsibilities, and traveling every week wasn't an option. So no matter how much we both wanted it, this whole idea that if someone doesn't act on the way they want, they don't care enough? That's ridiculous. You can care deeply about something or someone, but still have limits on what you can do. There's nothing wrong with having expectations in a relationship. We all want things from our partner. It's completely natural, but there's a difference between wanting something reasonable and expecting the impossible. For example, emotional support. If you and your partner are having a baby and you want your partner to be present and excited and hug you first when you find out the gender, that isn't asking for much, and those expectations are absolutely valid. But if you expect your partner to throw a huge gender reveal party, invite all your acquaintances that he doesn't even know, friends and family, and go all out with decorations and a giant cake with explosive sparklers, I feel like that's an unnecessary request. And there's plenty of people who would love that type of romance, to be showered with flowers and materialistic things, but to me, it's not the bare minimum that people says it is. Real love and commitment aren't just big sweeping gestures or always about being able to do this or that. Sometimes it's about making things work with the constraints of what's possible. It's easy to want something, but it's the effort you put in that matters. The if he wanted to, he would mindset creates a toxic standard for me. It makes people think that their partners just don't care just because they can't meet the unrealistic expectations. In the real world, relationships require balance, understanding, and communication, not some fairy tale notion that desire alone moves mountains. Healthy relationships are being aware that your partner might not always be able to do everything you want when you want it, but that doesn't mean they care any less. I'm not saying you should settle for a partner who doesn't make an effort or ignores your needs altogether. Like if they're constantly neglecting important things like not helping out with chores, mooches off of you, or never checks in with you emotionally, you're dating a child. And I would strongly advise that you have a serious conversation about it or break up, because you're clearly not on the same maturity level. That's why it's important to recognize what's realistic and what's not. Expecting someone to be a mind reader or to always meet your needs perfectly isn't healthy, and it's going to set you both up for disappointments. It's very easy to get wrapped up in the idea that love has to be proven with big gestures, especially when we see it in people showing off their relationships online, in media, and in other people's relationships. Like how jealous some women get when their friend gets a more expensive engagement ring. But real love, it's shown in everyday moments. It's your partner remembering how you like your coffee, or making time for you when your schedule is packed. It's in the little things that don't always look flashy or Instagram worthy, but mean the world if you're actually in a relationship. We should get better at recognizing the effort behind the action rather than just the action itself. Gift giving is a really hard love language, especially in this economy, but sometimes the gifts don't need a price tag. Whenever my partner goes out, he will bring me rocks that he thinks I'll like. When I go out, I pick wild flowers for him when I see them. Someone might not always be able to fly across the country to see you every weekend, but maybe they can check in with you regularly, plan trips when they can, and make you feel valued in ways that are possible. Please let go of the if you wanted to materialistic mindset and start focusing on the real signs of commitment, showing up when it counts, being consistent, and making the most of a situation. Because it's wild that we're still stuck on the idea that the only way to prove love is through materialistic goods, like paying for everything, period. I understand that some people prefer a more traditional dynamic. That's perfectly fine if it works for both parties. However, I keep hearing a lot of complaints about men who want to go 50-50, almost as frequently as I hear men grumbling about modern women who seem more interested in partying or posing on OnlyFans. Here's the simple solution to that. If you as a woman dislike the idea of splitting everything 50-50, don't date men who want that. You don't really need to keep complaining about men who prefer a financially equal partnership. Yeah, it really sucks to hear what stupid men have to hear whenever they complain about party girls, huh? Because it goes the same with men, by the way. If you don't want to date a 304, as you call it, don't. Find somebody new. Don't sit there and try to convince someone of a lifestyle that they don't want, because your persuasion skills aren't good enough to change their minds. There are plenty of women who like to stay inside, bake, read on Friday night. Same with men who work hard just so he can buy his wife nice things to keep her happy, and just generally have a provider mindset. But if someone doesn't want or even mind a man who doesn't want to provide, you don't need to shame them into changing their mind, because as we said it before, that doesn't work. I still believe that relationships should be kept equal, because if you as a woman are covering all the bills, I think the man should stay home and take care of everything else. But that's why I've always hated the question, what do you bring to the table? It's mostly asked by single men, but I've seen some women ask it too. Because this question, phrased like this, just makes everything feel like a transaction. Right? Like, what can you do for me? Instead of actually getting to know who the person is, imagine asking a potential friend that. Hey, what can you do for me if we're gonna be friends? Like, wow, you're vain, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. So romantic relationships shouldn't be any different. If you really want to know if you're compatible with someone, I think it's way better to ask something like, what are your values? That way you're still having a conversation about what matters to you. When you ask it in that way, it's not about getting a list of what they can do for you anymore, it's about understanding how they see their role as a partner, what they care about in life, whether they prioritize a career or making money, or homemaking or having kids, where they stand on things like marriage or keeping it casual, and also things like monogamy or an open relationship. And sure, someone can say all the right things, like they can talk all day about valuing monogamy and still cheat later on, but at least this gives you a clear idea about their mindset without turning it into a job interview. You're not looking to marry them on the spot based on their answers, you're just getting to know them better. By asking them about them as a person and not about what they can do, you're still figuring out if your priorities line up, but in a way that feels more natural and shows that you're actually interested in them as a person instead of a walking banker trophy. You'll get a better sense of whether your long-term goals and beliefs are compatible, and whether you see the world in similar ways. It's less about what they can offer and more about whether your values can support healthy, balanced relationships. Plus, it keeps you from sounding materialistic, where you're trying to figure out what you can get out of them. It sets a better tone for communication and shared values, and honestly, that's what keeps a relationship going, way more than just financial or materialistic stuff. Many men are looking for a relationship where both partners contribute equally, and that's totally valid. We've made so much progress regarding feminism, like women opening bank accounts and having careers, so in my opinion, it makes sense that some men are shifting their standards to seek a more financially equal relationship. Yet we're somehow still hung up on the notion that a guy's dateability as a partner is tied to how much he's willing to spend on her. That of course doesn't mean there's something wrong with wanting to be taken care of, but that goes for someone who wants the opposite too. I know these notions are mostly jokes, but there are plenty of people who despise specifically men who want 50-50. In my own relationship, I've always liked splitting things down the middle, not because I have to, but because I want to. I enjoy being independent and paying for my own stuff. That doesn't make my partner any less of a man or me any less feminine. It just means we're not bound by traditional gender roles defining our relationship. But also, just because I split 50-50 doesn't mean I have to do everything. Splitting 50-50 means also he shares half the housework, but if you prefer your partner to cover everything and that works for both of you, fantastic! That's you and your partner's choice. But I remember having friends who considered themselves feminists pulled me aside one day and asked if I was okay, because they felt like I was being taken advantage of. And it turns out they felt that way because I bought him lunch when it wasn't his birthday or anything special. But I told him that I just simply said, I'm hungry, I want to go to this place. Would you like to come along? It'll be my treat. They argue that a woman should never have to pay in the presence of a man. But to me, feminism is about empowering people to choose how they live and how they want to share their responsibilities. It's not like I've only ever spent my money on a man. I used to pay for my girlfriend's food all the time. But it's only when I pay for a man I'm being taken advantage of. If you prefer a traditional dynamic where you sit back and look pretty while your man pays, great. But that's equally fine if other people in their own relationships want something different. We need to stop shaming anyone for breaking away from traditional relationship norms. The focus should be on partnership, working together to build something sustainable and healthy. And that looks different for everyone. For some couples, it means splitting expenses right down the middle. For others, it might mean one person handles the bills while the other manages the home. If a man wants to cover everything and they want their woman to stay home, but the woman doesn't want that, that isn't sustainable. The key is that these arrangements should be a choice, one that works for both partners rather than a rigid expectations based on outdated gender roles. Unfortunately, it's not just finances where people get stuck in traditional gender roles. I recently saw a video of a woman proposing to her boyfriend, and it was the classic scene. She got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, and the man happily said yes, and she got up to hug and kiss him. My first thought was that he looked more confused than happy, which isn't unnatural. Many people's outward expressions don't match their inner feelings, but his reaction was what I was expecting people to talk about when I opened up the comments, because it's Instagram Reels and everybody is filled with hatred and anger over there. But instead, I got bombarded with comments like, I'm all for feminism, but ladies, don't do this. I was really surprised that the only problem that people had was the woman proposing, but also why? Who cares? I saw a second proposal like this too, where the overvoice was talking about how everyone's uncomfortable and how this isn't natural. I'm all for feminism, but this is... No, you're not. If something as insignificant as a woman proposing bothers you, you're not a feminist. The woman gets to vote, have bank accounts, and speak in public. Yeah, sure, whatever. But feminism is horrific because what if she proposes to me? If a woman wants to get married, why is she supposed to just wait for the man to hurry up and propose? Men, don't let your ladies do this. Propose before she embarrasses you like this. They say women who do this are rabbits chasing down hunters to get killed. Actually, women aren't prey and men aren't hunters. I don't know who the fuck said that because even if she did this the right way, a rabbit is still being killed by a hunter. So that analogy is still ass. Genuinely, what's so wrong about a woman proposing? What happened to the generation who loved that Topanga proposed to Corey in Boy Meets World? We talk about the importance of equality all the time, yet the moment a woman takes a traditionally masculine step in a hetero relationship, people lose their minds. Marriage culture has evolved significantly in modern times, reflecting broader societal changes. Marriage isn't necessarily what every woman desires either. Historically, marriage has been rooted in patriarchal values, often treating women as property rather than partners. So when someone says to a woman in a relationship, "Ooh, he hasn't proposed yet," that means he doesn't love you. What? How? Not getting married doesn't equate to a lack of love, just like a couple who chooses to get married doesn't automatically guarantee that they truly care for each other. So when a woman whose values align with marriage feels genuinely ready, there shouldn't be any issues with her taking the initiative to ask outright. Why normalize these passive-aggressive comments towards men like, "When are you gonna propose? I've been waiting for so long." Because this just adds unnecessary pressure and drama, thus creating the shut-up ring phenomenon. Sometimes a direct conversation about marriage can be refreshing for him as well. It shows that she's serious about what she wants and is confident enough to speak up. Why is there this persistent belief that men must be the ones to propose, lead, and take charge? If we're advocating for equality, shouldn't we be celebrating when women take the initiative instead of shaming them for it? What do these people expect from sapphic couples? Are they just supposed to sit around waiting for the other person to propose because women shouldn't do this? If you as a woman don't want to be the one to propose, don't. You don't need to shame others for making a different choice. This all ties back to what feminism should be about. Equality, choice, and freedom for everyone, not just women. Feminism is about dismantling barriers for all genders. So why are we still enforcing outdated rules on everyone? We talk big game about equality, but when we need to live it out, oh, that means you don't respect yourself as a woman. No, allow people to make their own choices about how their relationship look. If a woman wants to split the bills, propose, or take charge, she should be able to do so without criticism. If a man wants to express his emotions, receive flowers, and not always be a provider, that's his choice too. Feminism isn't always about swapping one set of rules for another. It's about creating a space for everyone to define their lives in their own terms. Stop policing other people's relationships and start respecting the choices that people make, whether it's about money, proposals, or who leads. Ultimately, what matters about your relationship is built on mutual respect and works for both people involved. If both of you are truly happy, please don't let others dictate on what you should or shouldn't let slide. Alright, that's it. Laters!